Okay. Think I know what to do. So I'm going to. We're gonna start watching a little bit of Lily Pete's Steven Universe review. I kind of want to like talk about it. It's not gonna be a long video. I'm not gonna watch the full 2 hours. That'd be fucking insane. You don't need to go insane about it, my friends. Uh, so yeah. All right. All right. So let's get started with this video. I'm not gonna watch the whole thing, as I said. 2 hours is a ridiculous amount of time to sit through. But there are some stuff in this video that I want to talk about. I'm gonna talk about the stuff that I know. I've been falling behind on Steven Universe personally because I really haven't been watching the show. I kind of had enough. I had enough of the show, so let's. But there's some stuff Lily says that's fucking stupid in here, and it's a main complaint I've had with her reviews multiple times. Hopefully, this does not get taken down like the Korra review. The Korra review kind of got fucked, but hopefully it's not going to be that.
This was a mistake. Steven Universe was a revolutionary cartoon that shook the boundaries of children's entertainment and bringing it to new heights. Or rather, everybody thought that it was. In reality, Steven Universe turned out to be a mess of inconsistent storytelling, mashed up cliches that haven't been allowed to die, and a conga line of characters so consistently horrible that it's like being around all of your worst.
Now, this whole thing with, oh, Steven Universe is pushing boundaries! Boundaries, man! It's pushing boundaries. Hold on, I want to fix something. Maybe I should put this here. Wow. This is a great video, to be honest. But yeah, the people are saying, "Oh, it's pushing boundaries, dude." I really don't think Steven Universe was pushing boundaries to begin with. Personally, I always felt. Yeah, I think that's much better. Put it up here. Yeah, it's much better. All right. So yeah, I don't think it was pushing boundaries. I think it was just when it started, it was just a fun show. It had a lot of comedy in it. It was goofy. I think it had a lot of stuff that I kind of liked. Um, it's not a terrible show, as a lot of people would probably have you believe. It's not terrible, but I also wouldn't say that the show is amazing or a masterpiece. I just think it was just a good show. It had good things going on with it. I don't think it was a oh my god, what a terrible movie, or a show. I don't think it was terrible, but I think it stayed goofy enough. I think the comedy is pretty good in it in a lot of ways. I I always appreciate a goofy show having kind of an arcing plot in it. So I do kind of like Steven Universe for doing that. But I do think that it's I think a lot of people just had the high expectations for the show that I don't think it was ever going to ever satisfy.
Family members for the longest Thanksgiving ever. Steven Universe enjoyed ample praise and lavishings from the general press when it first aired, but as time went on, its fanbase became significantly more critical and unhappy with the show's contents, to the point that being critical of the show was an entire subculture of its own, and that is not undeserved. Everything about the show is unprofessional and lazy, from its writing to the animation.
Now this premise of, oh, it's lazy, I don't really even think the show is lazy. To a degree, because it has its own flaws, but I mean, again, it's not like it's gonna be a perfect show to begin with. But I mean, Lily's criticism of laziness is very, very um doubtful. I think you could say that it's lazy for the. I think you could say the plot twists are lazy. Like, oh, of course this plot twist would happen. I don't know. I don't know.
To the very core ideas the series pretends to have. It's long since burned off much of the goodwill it initially had.
Oh yeah, this show has been on so many hiatuses. That's kind of why I fell off of the Steven Universe wagon, because it got to the point, to me, where I was sitting and waiting for new episodes, and then they would do this Steven bomb, and they would have all these new episodes that would just be filler. And I just, oh wait, shit, I forgot. I should probably up Lily's volume a little bit. But yeah, it's just I had enough. I had enough waiting for a show and then just waiting for fucking uh and then just end up waiting for uh filler, that kind of pissed me off.
Trying to figure out what went wrong. That's what I'm gonna try to do here, going as in-depth as I possibly can, but Lord knows even I miss something because it just keeps getting worse and worse as time wears on. Dear fucking Lord, somebody please end my miserable existence. This is a thorough deconstruction of why Steven Universe is a garbage show that is bad.
Now, if you really want to see a better review or a better criticism of Steven Universe, I would say watch RoboBuddy's video about it. She kind of has a better approach to criticizing the show. It's actually more fair points. I think she brings up better issues than Lily does. But that's just me. We're just gonna skip ahead.
I've gotten something of a reputation in the past for shitting on serialization, and I need to make it clear that I don't necessarily hate serialization itself. I hate the prevailing attitude that serialization is objectively superior to episodic storytelling in every possible scenario. Like any other narrative tool, serialization works very well when it's appropriate to the story. It's very easy to just say that shows with a continuous overarching plot are always better than a monster of the week, but that's just flat out not true, and it's most evident in shows that try to have it both ways.
But you can have a show that goes both ways. It's okay to have fucking a show that's serialized and episodic. I think there is a happy medium with it. And I think the other reason why Steven Universe got a lot of buzz at the time for what it did was because you never saw a lot of comedy shows do serialized, I guess that's what it's called, plots, like overarching plots. And I think Steven Universe was kind of not the pioneer, but it just kind of was a show that took it to the mainstream, I guess. It did it in a better way, and I was more interested in how this did. That's what got me into Steven Universe to begin with. Like when I was watching the first season, and I was like, oh, there's overarching plots. Oh, that's interesting. That was interesting. So I don't really think it's a negative that Steven Universe is a serialized show. I think it's unique for what it is when it came out. I mean, now every show does it, but I mean, for its time, it was like, a new concept almost.
But regardless of what narrative tool you decide to use for your show, you do have to pick one, and this is what seems to trip up Rebecca Sugar at every possible angle. Steven Universe has this long, overarching plot about the Crystal Gem War and Homeworld discovering they're still active and fucking with their plans. Now, for a while, the Crystal Gems and Homeworld plot was really interesting, and we'll get into why that fell down the plug hole in just a few minutes. But what was consistently aggravating is that Sugar clearly wanted to maintain a Monster of the Week vibe on top of that and focus on more character-specific elements like The Last Airbender did. Now, I can already hear you confused comments going, "But don't you love that shit, Lily?" Yes, I do. But there's a problem. You see, it wasn't character work for the characters you would think would get the time and focus. Steven? Connie? Pearl? Amethyst? Garnet? Peridot? Lapis? Nah, clearly nothing to do with any of them. Let's have 7 different episodes about why Lars is an unbelievable douche. Let's do 3 about
Oh, I know that vid is down, Gary. Viacom got me, man. Viacom sent their E-Assassins to me and took the video down. Feels bad, man. But, and I don't know if that's what's gonna happen with Steven Universe. Because I've heard stories that Cartoon Network kind of goes after videos, but who knows? Who knows? But the reason why I paused here is because they do develop those other characters. They kind of develop them in the main episodic plot points and other episodes. I mean, they do develop them. I think the other thing that I always thought was interesting about Steven Universe as well when I first watched the show was that it kind of developed the background characters, and it kind of made the world of Steven Universe seem more lively. I think that's kind of what was also uh, interesting about the show, that it just did not focus on the core characters. It explored other characters, and I think that was kind of fun for what it is. I don't think it's a great show, as I said, but it was promising.
Naldo being a conspiracy theorist. Let's do something about Mayor Dewey for some fucking reason. Ooh, I know. How about that one family that runs a pizza shop? I bet their lives are totally fucking interesting. What's that? Intergalactic fascism with a smattering of natural rule? Boring. Let's talk about the wrestling scene. That's where the real action's at. You see, the side stories of the
wrestling
last
episode was
Airbender
kind
were
of
so
fun,
good
though.
because they offered insight into a primary character. The Southern Raiders was about Katara getting revenge on the man that killed her mother. Zuko alone was about witnessing firsthand the damage that his father's warmongering has been causing on the Earth Kingdom. You know what the last Airbender didn't have? An entire character arc for the Cabbage Guy. But that's what Steven Universe is doing. The residents of
Because it's a different type of show. Steven Universe is more of a, not improv, but it has a completely different design, I think. Like it has a different kind of design to its story and its characters than The Last Airbender did. Last Airbender, I mean, you had to focus on the main cast because they're traveling constantly. You know, with Steven Universe, you're kind of stuck in this city, and you have these characters that the main character interacts with. I do think on the other hand, I think the issue that Steven Universe has mostly is that it just focuses on characters that the audience likes. You know, when you watch a show and you're just like, oh, I really like that background character. Oh man, he's so cool. He had that one line, man, and you know, you think in your head, oh, there should be a whole design with that character. And that's kind of what Steven Universe does, which is kind of bad. I think that is a fair argument, but I think at the same time, though, Steven Universe does have the luxury to do that. I don't think it's necessarily great or that it should, but it can, I guess. I just want to hear if you got. I watched some of Gravity Falls. I never really saw it consistently. I saw the last episode and I saw some episodes here and there. It was interesting. I liked it. I like the characters, but I never really felt. I don't know. I never really felt attached to the Disney Channel. I have the Disney Channel. I could have watched it whenever, but I never really felt the need to watch it. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll take it seriously.
Beach City aren't active players in the thin veneer of a story that Steven Universe pretends to have. They're background characters. They're weirdly misshapen, constantly shrinking Lyras. They don't get proper character arcs because they show up, deal with the crisis of the day, and then go sit in the green room until Sugar wants to stall for time again. Literally the only one who does change is Lars, and that's because Sugar literally fucking killed him and replaced him with another character entirely. The rest of them are just there to distract from the fact that the story is dragging on and on and on.
Yeah,
Normally filler is
what he did with Lars was weird. I didn't quite get. And fairly, it is a very typical of Disney, though. Yeah, I don't know. It's just that, I mean, this Disney Channel altogether. I mean, it's not like it was like, oh, I disagree with Disney or this that. It was just that I never really cared about their shows. It was just kind of like, you know, passing for me. It's like, okay, whatever. I don't know. It's really weird. I have a weird relationship with Disney.
Trying to flesh out the world and the other characters, but the world being fleshed out is Earth, which doesn't need fleshing out. The characters being explored are random bit parts who ultimately mean nothing, and they're not funny. Filler episodes
They're
of
not
shows
funny, dude. Ronaldo kind of was kind of funny. I did enjoy his videos, his episodes.
are usually the fun, light-hearted episodes the writers use to ease off the tension of the main story, if they have one. Steven Universe doesn't have that need for easing tension, as the filler episodes outnumber the story episodes considerably. It almost feels like Sugar wanted to have a story about an intergalactic space war, but also wanted to just write fanfics about random people in Beach City and couldn't seem to pick one. And for a while that worked for her. The fandom at the very least seemed to love all of this, and Steven Universe Circa Season 1 had an extremely critically undiscerning fanbase.
I think the reason why a lot of people liked the filler episodes was that they were just kind of funny. Like they didn't feel like it was a complete waste of time, but it's just it got worse the more interesting the story went on. I think the reason why the filler episodes people are slowly turning on in Steven Universe is because the deeper you get into the show, the more development you get from it. Like, oh, you have these diamonds that are in the galaxies, and you see this like corruption and all the stuff that goes on and on and on, and you get very curious. Like, oh shit, this should happen with Rose. Oh fuck, and then it's like, okay, well let's do some filler episodes, and it just becomes like what? So that's what I didn't like, and that's what drove me off. It was like you can't just have an interesting plot point and then decide to do filler right after that. You kind of have to have a conclusion to that arc and then do filler, not just have an interesting thing and then okay filler, okay back to the interesting thing. It just that did not work, and I think how the show was aired kind of did not help it either.
But everything changed when the hiatus is attacked. Steven Universe schedule went off
Dude, I get it. Hiatus is attacked. Man, funny.
the rails almost immediately, airing regularly for a while but then condensing itself into short bursts of episodes called Steven Bombs. The first hiatus lasted for 41 days and started with the episode Bubble Buddies, the 7th episode of the series. The show had just started and it was all the fourth hiatus lasted just over 3 months and came back to Coach Steven just 5 episodes after the last hiatus came back, and then stuck around consistently for a few months before going on hiatus for another month. We're not even through season 1 yet, and Alder went on hiatus for another 3 weeks to come back to Cry for Help in Keystone Motel. Then a week later, starting to see the theme, went on hiatus for another 54 days and returned to Nightmare Hospital. Then the show managed to remain consistent for a little while before going on hiatus again for 80.
I don't know about that either. I mean, because the thing is, animation does have a lot of stress. It's hard. It's hard because at one point it's like, well, you're doing a job and you kind of have to see it through. But at the same time, animators do have it not harder. Like it's not like super duper hard, but it's not an easy job either. So I'm very in the middle with that kind of opinion. I think there is a happy medium you can get, but I just don't I can't say. I think there's just the hiatuses were ridiculous, and I think it's mostly I don't really necessarily believe that it was designed by Rebecca Sugar to have these hiatuses. I think it was the network. I think the network wanted to save money, so the best way that they could save money is just by having them do these spurts of new episodes. So they don't really have to spend a lot of money on a full season and air that. They could just divide the season in bits and do these little hiatuses and then just drop them. I think that's kind of why they did it that way. She should have stuck to drawing Tumblr art for Red Money. Well, I don't know if Tumblr money is where it's at, TBH.
Days and coming back to The Answer. Once again, the show lasted for only a
Now, a lot of people kind of complain about Steven Universe's art style, but I will kind of argue that, saying that I think the art style is pretty good. I do like the backgrounds of the show. I do like some of the shapes. A lot of people think that this Cal art style is similar. It's all the same. But I don't necessarily think it's that. I think it's just that it's similar in the sense that we're seeing animation break down characters in shapes. But with Steven Universe, that made more sense. Like, you would have humans be these kind of soft, shaped characters, and then when you have these rock characters, it would be kind of these edgy, square-like styles. So I think for Steven Universe, the art style worked for that show. But when you have like Gravity Falls, Thundercats Roar, Mysterious World of Gumball, all these shows that have similar styles, not the same, but just similar in the sense of rounded shapes, I think they all start to blend together. I don't think it's necessarily that these are the same styles, because if you go to CalArts, they're not going to teach you how to do this style. I just think it's just something that the network seeks out, and they want shows to be similar to that design. I think that's what's going on here. But Steven Universe, I think for its time had a good style. I do like the art style. I do like its simplistic style. It allows a lot of stuff that is good for distance shots, where you have very simplified models when the camera pans out. You have these nice backgrounds, these backdrops. I do like that. Um, I do think that animation should be allowed to have these kind of distinct styles. I do kind of wish that we saw more shows experiment with other styles. I do kind of feel that too.
Another week before having the second longest hiatus of 5 months between.
I do too, Maribel. I never. It's one of those things that I understand why people call it the CalArt style. I do get why that name stuck, but I don't think it's necessarily accurate. That's just me.
Went on hiatus again for 44 more days, returning to the Summer of Steven, where the series managed to stay on air for the rest of the summer. Then the 12th hiatus came, lasting another 2 months, and returned on Gem Harvest. The third, and this was our talk to him, Lapis panicking that Homeworld is coming to Earth and reminding everyone that there are fascists in space coming to kill them all, and Steven and the cool kids start a band. Then the show went on hiatus for another 3 months. Steven Universe spent so much time on hiatus that the waiting just continued to wear people down. I talked about this on the Clop Drawer podcast and Glass of Water. As the waiting dragged on and on and on, people started getting angry.
Yeah,
hiatus has happened
the
in TV shows all the time, but
the story would get interesting, and then you would just get a hiatus, and it's like, I don't want to fucking wait. Fuck this.
But Steven Universe has hiatuses in excess, and that kind of drawn
No, I wouldn't say that. A lot of people might say shit about this, but there was a video by Butch Hartman about the CalArt style. I know Butch Hartman is not the greatest guy anymore, but I think he did a pretty good video on the CalArt style. Theo, did you watch the video? I watched Star versus and it is some problems. This guy basically suggests that kids cartoons should just be for kids. What's your opinion on that? I think cartoons. I think it is typically for younger audience. I just think that the way that they write their shows and the way that they make them work is that they want the shows to also be enjoyed by the kids' parents. That's why you see a lot of adults watch cartoons, because it's not dumb shit. It's not you want to rip your ears off. They made it so that it's more digestible for everyone. That's why I don't think it's. I think the stigma of cartoons are for kids is kind of weakened, because now animators are making shows for the whole family. They're making shows that anyone can watch and enjoy, and I think that's and that creates another issue where people who review these shows forget that these are just kind of simplistic storytelling, simple stories. These shows aren't meant to fully delve into adult themes, and I think ultimately that's what Steven Universe does. I think it delves in these issues very in a simplistic way, because it doesn't want to, okay, kids, let's watch Steven Universe. Okay, guys, this guy's a fascist. We're gonna fucking kill him. Oh, let's talk about the fucking gay rights and this, and it's like, it does talk about some of those things in the show, but it does it in a way that's simple and not inappropriate. I feel like that Steven Universe does treat them in an appropriate way. So there you go. If cartoons are for kids, then the Boondocks should have been on. Well, the thing is, cartoons in general. If we're including adult-themed cartoons, then of course, I mean, it depends on the show. I think it all depends on the show you're making. You can have cartoons for adults and for more mature audiences. Cartoons aren't specifically just for kids, but cartoons can be for everyone. But I'm speaking specifically for this. But if we're saying cartoon as a medium, like animation as a medium, I mean, of course, that's ridiculous to say that's just for kids, because you have cartoons for adults. I mean, even back in the day, back in the 1920s or the 60s, or early in the day, we had these things called Nickelodeons not the channel, actual devices called Nickelodeons that played animations that were kind of pornographic. So, the 1920s had hentai pretty much. So you have so cartoons are for adults as well. I mean, it's like you have live action. There's live action for kids and there's live action for adults. I mean, it's just a medium. Animation is a medium. I think network CEOs would love to just assume that cartoons are just for kids. I mean, that's what happens with the Oscars. There was an article I read years ago where they would talk to the Oscar panels, the people who pick the Oscars, and they all said they don't go see animated movies. They just give it to whatever their kid says was good. That's why a lot of Pixar movies win, because these people listen to their kids and see what they like. They don't watch the animated movies, which is fucking terrible, because there's a lot of good animated films that are very smart, like Anomalisa. That's a very good movie.
Rating is unheard of. But here's where the biggest problem lies. If you binge watch the series now, everything seems fine. The filler episode's biggest problem in retrospect is just that they're boring, and most people would rather be told the cool story about space battles, not the boring story about some loudmouth brat who doesn't have any earlobes. But when you put it into the context of people waiting...
I like that show. You call me a pretentious prick because I liked Over the Garden Wall? I mean, come on. That show was pretty good. It had a nice animation style. I like the story. I mean, it's a good show.
6 months after leaving that kid on a hostile alien planet, only to come back and not even bother giving it a passing glance for multiple weeks, people are going to get angry. Episodes exist so that you don't have to go on.
Okay, this is the issue with Lily's Steven Universe video. It goes on way too long on these points. We're 7 minutes in, and I think this is like 3 minutes? Wait, no. Okay, roughly, like, let's see, 3 minutes so far, roughly 3 minutes, and he's still going on about hiatuses killing the show. Do you really need to keep this going for, like, how long? I mean, come on.
Hiatus. Your story lasts 12 episodes, but they ordered 24, so you spread those story episodes out between fun filler episodes to pass the time and create organic gaps between story events. Steven Universe just has pauses and gaps in between that otherwise organic scheduling. It throws everything off. When people hear that Steven Universe is coming back after 6 months, the last thing they're going to want to see is some episode about Mayor Dewey. We don't need a break from the story, we just fucking had one. This contributes to what many people see as a feeling that the story is stalling because it has these long stretches of nothing, then comes back to filler that should have been put in those gaps. If you believe that it's all Cartoon Network's doing for the constant hiatuses, which I don't, Sugar should have caught on to this a while ago and written her episodes accordingly. If you're constantly...
But the thing is that when you're writing a show, it's kind of hard to know when you're going on hiatus, and even if you write around that, it's a hard situation. I mean, I don't think it's a right situation to be in. I just think it was a show that shouldn't have been on hiatus. I don't think the delivery method works for the show.
Going on a hiatus, you don't need to make this kind of crap, but Sugar continued making it anyway.
Because it could just be more expensive to do these big roundabout, not big roundabout, these big action scenes. It would take a lot of money to do them. So if you written around these hiatuses, let's say, I mean, you might get less episodes because these big action scenes do take a lot more effort to make. You have to animate these action scenes. It's not necessarily easy. So, I mean, it might not have been necessarily feasible for her to write the show around that.
I don't even know why. Who goes through all that effort to make magical lesbian space rocks and then devotes
lesbian space rocks? I kind of hate that phrase. Magic space lesbian rocks, dude. They're fucking aliens. I mean, they don't have a male species. They're all female, so I mean, but I get it because I mean they're using the rocks as a metaphor for lesbians, but okay.
So much fucking time to just average, ordinary, everyday humans. Are you telling me that all of the literally colorful characters in this show, your favorite is Lars? The guy doesn't have earlobes, Rebecca. The issue with filler is even worse when
Maybe people like Lars because he's a fucking dumbass. I don't know. I mean, people have different opinions on what side characters they like.
There's an active story arc going on. In the Cluster arc, a massive artificial fusion comprised of millions of gem shards, by the way, remember this is going to be important later, is discovered to be baking beneath the Earth's crust and will soon form and destroy the entire planet. I repeat, it will soon destroy the entire fucking planet. Now, in any other show, this kind of story would have a sense of urgency about it. Not in Steven Universe, however. The episodes Back to the Barn, Too Far, The Answer, Steven's Birthday, Message Received, and Log Date 7152 barely have anything to do with the actual story.
Well, I mean, technically, yeah, barely, but they kind of do have some connection to that arc. But again, I think it's because it's an 11-minute cartoon. You can't really go that far with the story. It's kind of rough.
Spend most of the time chilling and not really doing much. It's only Back to the Barn.
I will say I do like Peridot and Lapis, two good characters. Those are the only two characters that kind of make me want to go back to watching Steven Universe. They were my favorite characters, but I don't know. Maybe someday. Maybe when they put the rest of the show on Hulu.
That in any way advances the story itself, and there's no reason why the other three couldn't have waited until after the cluster had been stopped. If you take the episodes that make up the cluster arc and rearrange them so the waffling happens after the cluster has been bubbled, this problem goes away. For something that threatens the Earth, the thing the Crystal Gems care about more than anything else, there's a distinct lack of actual tension in the story. Nobody's stressed out, nobody's worried. Wait, no, scratch that. Peridot's worried, but don't worry, we'll lobotomize her soon enough. For an arc supposedly about the cluster, I actually forgot it was even a thing on first viewing because several episodes in a 4-month hiatus went by without it getting a passing mention. After Malachite is defeated, the cluster starts to wake up and everyone's like, oh yeah, the cluster's a thing. Nearly every
Pretty much, people kind of forgot.
Arc has this issue. The Jasper arc from Gem Hunt to Earthlings has Bismuth smacked in the middle of it. The Homeworld arc has Dewey Wins, Gemcation, and Kevin Party wedged inside it. And the Pink Diamond arc that immediately follows has 5 episodes jammed between it before anything remotely resembling a conclusion starts to inch its way forward. The biggest contributor to this constant starting and stopping is the fact that Steven Universe plays out like any other cartoon. But unlike any other cartoon, it's lashed to Steven himself at all times. So while in theory...
Because the show is called Steven Universe. Of course Steven has to be there. You know, there's a show I used to watch. Moral Oral. Great show. I love that show. The creator, Dinos Stamatopoulos, said that he always dreamed to do episodes that were more about the people of Moralton instead of just Oral. Like he thought, and that's kind of, you see that with season 3. Season 3, he starts to branch out to other characters. And one of the original ideas he wanted to call the show Moralton because he wanted to keep the show open so he could kind of go to other characters. But since it's called Moral Oral, it kind of had to stick with Oral. I was watching the 3rd season with a friend, or an old friend, I guess, and he was asking me, like, you know, the show is called Moral Oral, and this episode didn't really have Oral, and the show is about Oral's mom. And I was like, yeah, you know, I get that, but I think, you know, he wants to explore all the characters of the show. So, did you watch SpongeBob as a kid? SpongeBob, I think, started when I was like 9, 10 years old. I think it was like in 2000. I watched it here and there. I mean, it's another show I watched casually, and then I just fell off after newer episodes, but...
The plot tends to play out at a relatively realistic pace.
Yeah, like that episode, Petya-chan, like the woman in the apartment complex.
All the important and interesting things are happening completely off screen. This is why there are so many episodes about Steven bumming around Beach City, why there are so many instances of random characters doing fuck all with Steven, why there are so many episodes where Steven is hanging out with some other gem only for the plot to come bursting through the wall, or a character's personal issues just jump right out of the blue. This is most egregious in Last One Out of Beach City, where the episode is entirely about Pearl seducing some human lady who looks like Rose, and also Steven is there. He's been shoved into the episode just because the show has mandated that he always be here, despite the fact that the episode would work just as well, if not better, if he wasn't hogging.
I mean, technically, you know, you could argue that Rebecca should have experimented taking a risk of having a show with without Steven, but I don't think that would work very, very well with some of the audience. But Yeah, and Clay Puppington is voiced by Scott Adsit. He's a really good voice. He's a very good actor. I like him too. And then there was what was the other what was the other voice actor? Jay Johnston, who was in Mr. Show. He was also in a few other stuff. I mean, there's a lot of good people in that show. Uh, I don't know who voiced Roberta. Hmm. I mean, they got a good voice cast.
Screen time. I need to stress that this is unusual for any TV show. TV shows are typically written in a full third-person perspective so that the focus can shift for a bit when necessary. Avatar has a ton of moments where the perspective shifts to Zuko and Iroh as early as the first episode.
Because, I mean, they served a purpose. I mean, and the show's called Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, yeah, it's in the name, but it's not called Aang and his crew, you know. It's called Avatar: The Last Airbender. It opens itself to have that. And again, it's a different style of a show. Avatar is a completely different thing. I never quite get why people compare Steven Universe to Avatar. They're two very different shows that have two different goals in there. It's not the same. It's not the same show.
And even episodes where Aang isn't present at all. Fan favorite episodes like Zuko Alone, Tales of Ba Sing Se, The Boiling Rock, The Southern Raiders, and 3/4 of Sozin's Comet wouldn't have happened if the series lashed itself to Aang the way Steven Universe lashed itself to Steven. We probably have more insight.
Well, one show's called Steven Universe and the other one's called Avatar: The Last Airbender.
To the Diamonds as a whole if the show could just bother to tear itself away from Steven for even a second. Even episodes that technically don't feature Steven are either a story being told to him or feature a fusion that Steven inhabits. With this arbitrary restriction in place, a lot of interesting things happen completely off screen, which in terms of storytelling means it doesn't actually happen. Legend of Korra had this problem to an extent in its final season, where 95% of Kuvira's asshole dictator behavior happens off screen and is only ever
because they didn't have time to show it. I mean, like, yeah, I get that. I always get the argument that they want to see more of Kuvira's dictatorship and all of that. All of it is just implied, which I understand. I get that, but at the same time, it's a 13 episode season. Like, it's kind of rough to put that in there, and I don't know. I mean, it's always a different thing.
Vaguely alluded to. And a lot of people bought that laziness with, oh, well, it happens off screen. That's not good enough.
Hold on,
you
everyone.
have
Be right back.
With a kissing count of future, maybe kids don't need a masters, just to wait there for the real stars. Oh yeah. With a kissing count of future, maybe kids don't need a masters, just.
All right, I'm back. I was expecting a package that I guess never came. Very excited for the Invader. There's an Invader Zim movie? What the fuck? What? When did this happen?
have to show it to us. Steven Universe has so many characters that just sit there and do fucking nothing because Steven isn't around to see them. Lapis and Peridot are the two biggest examples, as they're locked in the barn at all times until Steven decides to visit them, at which point something actually happens. Lapis is actually one of many characters who has a lot of shit to work through, but can't actually do that in the vast majority of cases because Steven isn't there, so she's not allowed to do anything. As a result of this, Lapis comes off to many people as one of Sugar's dozens of attempts at woofifying absolutely terrible and reprehensible people, and We'll fucking get to that. But Lapis didn't have to be this way. If you replaced every single episode of Steven screwing around a beach city with some rando with episodes about the other gems, Lapis could have actually been a character. Peridot could contribute in some way.
They're already characters. I mean, they get development enough for the kind of characters that they are. There's so many characters. I mean, you can't really take the time to develop all of them in a main plot. I don't know. It's weird. Like, you can't really expect when you have a cast that's this big and a runtime of 11 minutes. You kind of have to have some concessions with story development. I mean, again, I think, Lily and some people go into Steven Universe kind of expecting the show to kind of have enough development for everyone, and it's never gonna have that. And I think that's a major issue. I think what the issue really is that I think Steven Universe tries to expand the scope too far, but at the same time, I mean, you kind of have to understand that some characters are just by nature gonna have less development than others. I mean, of course, like, we're not gonna have a lot of episodes that develop Yellow Diamond and White Diamond and Pink Diamond and Red Diamond and Blue Diamond and Black Diamond. You're never gonna get these developments of all of the characters. You're gonna get only some of them. And it has to be reasonable with what the structure is. You really have to design the show around what it is, and if you want to add more characters, that's fine, but you're just gonna have to shift development whenever. Black Diamond loves to ski. That's good development.
Might have been able to work through her insecurities more organically. Pearl might not have been such a crazy asshole. Garnet might not have been relegated to exposition about fusion and nothing else. An entire arc about Lapis becoming a better person and making a turnaround from the abuse.
Well, Garnet had more to do than just fusion. I mean, she has a whole arc about seeing the future and strategy and all this stuff. I mean, she had other stuff going on. What if there was a show that starts as a show for kids and run for 20 years and constantly grows with the audience? That is a ambitious idea, but I don't know if that would work necessarily because, the audience constantly shifts and changes. So, like, that show might be designed that way, but then it's gonna change time because there's also time slots that shows have to be aware of because there's always going to be a time slot that's kids watching. So if the show ages to be for 20-year-olds with the audience that started watching, it would have to change a time slot. It would be very hard. I think it would be more possible if the show was a YouTube series or if it was a Netflix series. I think if it was a series like that, it might possibly work. But I think in order for that to work, it would probably be a show that would be contained in one series and then do a sequel series where the characters are older. I think that could work.
Of fuckstick she used to be, that sounds a hell of a lot better than the 6 episodes trying to salvage Lars before Sugar just gave up, killed him off, and replaced him with Zaphod Beeblebrox. Sugar likes to put terrible people in leather pants so much, why not have someone actually grow and become better and earn that supposed redemption, rather than just stagnating for years until he just...
Oh, this whole thing about fucking redemptions is so silly. It's so silly.
Steal your girlfriend's shit and leave. Once again, another story about abuse that gets outclassed by Family Guy of all fucking things. The end result of this laser focus on Steven means that nothing is fucking happening. There are so many throwaway episodes you can just...
By the way, you can tell Lily loves Family Guy. Great taste, right?
Skip and not miss anything, where nothing interesting happens, none of the characters we actually like so much as show their faces, and nobody who matters actually grows or changes in any way. Steven Universe, because of this forced perspective, remains steadfast in its refusal to actually explore any of the ideas it presents. Instead, it offers hints. It gives hints that Lapis might have PTSD. It gives hints that Peridot might have self-worth issues.
Well, they can't really go into full detail of PTSD because the audience may not understand it. Again, you kind of have, when you do a show that kids can watch, you kind of have to do these light little hints at things. You can't just drop it in and be like, all right, look, You know, oh man, PTSD, dude. You can't really do that.
It gives hints of character development. This isn't good writing, it's lazy writing. The sad thing is it's lazy writing that works. When I did my video about Tempest Shadow, one of the most common attempts at a refutation from people was to accuse me of not being able to see hints of character development, and people speculating on what Tempest's life could have been. But I did see those hints of character development, and I did speculate on their potential. But I also rightfully concluded that because the movie didn't bother to do anything with that potential, then that potential was irrelevant. This is something most fandoms can't grasp, and why hinting at character development is the easy way out for a lot of shows. Steven Universe.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's nice. I think being subtle works better than being obvious. Now, I think what Lily's trying to say is that it should get into like it should flesh out the PTSD with Lapis a little bit more, maybe like go into like what a real PTSD person would go through. But I think that's what Lily is trying to say, is that it doesn't go far enough with it, and I kind of see it, but at the same time I think the show does a adequate job of doing it. I don't think it needed to do any more. You know, when you saw Lapis come back into the character into the show, you saw enough. I mean, you really do feel, oh, she has you know, issues. She has trust issues. She has issues being with someone who was her captor before. You know, it's just, you kind of had enough of that, and I think the show shows enough of it. The self-worth issues does have, you know, it's enough. I don't think that the show needed to do more. I think it had enough development for it. You know, I think it's this whole mentality of, you would love to see more of this thing. I agree, it would be nice to see more of it, but, you know, we might not need it. You know, when I watched Legend of Korra, I would love to see more scenes with Tenzin. And Tenzin, Bumi, and Kaya. I like those three characters. I would love to see more of that, but I didn't feel like I needed to. You know, I thought that, you know, that development was fine. You know, it really depends on what you're looking for, but I think it's important to really look at a show and think, does what it does it do appropriately? Does it do enough of? Like, and it's all subjective. I mean, some people might say that Steven Universe doesn't do enough, which, you know, is valid. It's a valid reason. But you really need to explain that a little bit more than just, I need to see more. You know, you can't just say, I need to see more without a reason.
Interesting about a character and just fucking leaves it there. The fandom picks it up and speculates, concocts elaborate theories that delve into layers of intrigue, and then concludes that because of all this speculation, that Steven Universe is an amazing show. Do you see what's just happened though? Rebecca Sugar is getting all the credit and praise, but the fans are the ones doing all the real.
But, you know, and this kind of goes into this other thing that a lot of people ignore the fun of interpretation. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of creators that kind of milk it to hide lazy writing. Like, oh, I didn't have time to develop this. Well, the fans can make up their own. And yeah, there are people who abuse interpretation. But again, it's one of those things that's like, how can you prove that it's lazy? You know, you could say it is, and that's fine, and more power to you. But, you know, it's a very subjective point.
Work. They're writing elaborate story ideas that the show will never even try to use, but she's getting all the credit for it. Steven Universe is providing little more than a collection of writing prompts and being heralded as an amazing and deep show just because a bunch of far more creative people can write 50 pages based off those prompts. The big twist of the show is that Rose is Pink Diamond, but that twist was guessed by the fandom the moment Pink Diamond's name was first mentioned, and I said at the time that the Rose is Pink Diamond theory was without a doubt the worst possible way to end that entire arc, which meant Sugar was definitely going to do it. Worse off, not only does Steven Universe rely on the fans to imagine a better show in its place, it actively mocks them for doing so. In the episode Lion 4 Alternate Ending, Steven spends an episode deconstructing Rose's tape and trying to find the answer to his purpose in life. This has been a common trend for fandom theory since the start of the show, namely, why did Rose give herself up to bring Steven into the world? Steven investigates as much as he can and finds a tape for Nora and spends the rest of the episode trying to discover who Nora is. Nora is just what Steven's name would have been if he was a girl, and the only reason he exists at all is just because Rose wanted a baby. Now you might be asking yourself, why did this need to be an entire episode that teased
But I wonder, like, how did Steven get made though? I don't know.
The viewer with something interesting, only to yank it
So
out from
weird.
under them at the last minute. Because fuck you, that's why. This episode's only defense for existing is we need to remind people that they're special just the way they are. But anybody who actually needs to be reminded of that is going to need more solid ground than Steven Universe to tell them. This is the closest thing to a solid theme that Steven Universe even has. With the exception of characters that already have their shit together, almost every character arc is about learning to love yourself. But not loving yourself in the practical way, where you have aspirations and goals and work toward them while taking part in self-improvement and making sure you're a healthy and functional person. You know, what loving yourself actually means. We mean the internet version of loving yourself, where you're complacent, never put in any effort to solve your problems, mope until somebody coddles you and pretends you don't have problems in the first place, and give up the moment you're confronted with failure because
What?
acknowledging that you have things to work on isn't comfortable. You're
What? I mean, the show kind of covers that, but I think Lily's kind of missing the point. It's not that it's trying to teach you to be complacent with being bad. I don't necessarily think that's the case. Because I think once you understand that you have a limit, that you have something to work for. I think that's what it's trying to teach you, is that you have a goal to work for. But whatever.
already as good as you're ever going to be, says the Rebecca Sugar. Interestingly enough, the best characters in the show are the ones that don't do this. Connie aspires to be more than she currently is, works hard, and by the end of her effective character arc, she's able to fend off a fusion alone while Steven has another sulking fit. She's the
But the thing is, though, is that not everyone's the same. I mean, not everyone can overcome their issues. I mean, let's hear this again.
loving yourself actually means. We mean the internet version of loving yourself, where you're complacent, never put in any effort to solve your problems, mope until somebody coddles you and
So if you have a friend and he's just moping around, he's just depressed, don't coddle him, don't talk to him. Just let him stay there. Let him sulk in his fucking self-pity. That's what Lily would do. I mean, like, I think Gurren Lagann did a little bit better when Simone kind of had to get over Kamina's death. Ah, shit, spoilers, but it's an old anime, so you guys had time. But there was this whole arc of Simone kind of coming to terms with that, and you saw in that arc that, yeah, it had to come through him as well, but it also had to come through other people. It can't just be just Simone. I mean, he had Nia there with him, that Nia had to also kind of propel him to be more than what he was, to push him, to elevate him. And that's kind of what goes on with Steven Universe. You have these characters like Amethyst, who feels like that she's inadequate, that she has said she will never be great. And that led to her just being a sloth, pretty much, just not trying anymore, not doing anything. And, you're going to want to propel her to get back on her feet and have her to do more. And Lily just kind of misses that point. She just thinks that the show is saying, well, if you're not good enough, fuck it, and I don't think that's the lesson.
pretend you don't have problems in the first place, and give up the moment you're confronted with failure because acknowledging that you have things to work on isn't comfortable. You're already as good as you're ever going to be, says the Rebecca Sugar. Interestingly enough, the best characters in the show are the ones that don't do this. Connie aspires to be more than she currently is, works hard, and by the end of her effective character arc,
She had a different aspiration, and she also doesn't. She doesn't have the same limitations as a gem, I think, because I remember them saying like gems have like natural limitations, like they can't really go above what their limit is or whatever. Connie, I mean, humans have a lot to aspire to. They could be more than what they are. But again, comparing Connie to Amethyst is kind of irrelevant because they're two different characters with different backgrounds and shit. I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, I would have compared it more to another gem, in my opinion. I think that would be a more apt comparison than comparing a human with an alien.
she's able to fend off a fusion alone while Steven has another sulking fit. She's the most emotionally stable among the cast, which I know isn't a high bar to clear in the first place, but bear with me here, and frequently pulls everyone else out of danger.
I think that's the point, because I think what Rebecca was trying to do is just having a human character that is the straight man, that is reasonable and like more confident, while you have these aliens that you would naturally think would be better than man, have more issues that that's different. I think that's the point, but whatever. I mean, I guess either everyone has to be stable or no one can be stable. Okay.
Bismuth was another character who aspired to be more than she was, so much so she longed to take that aspiration to Homeworld and liberate everyone, and for her initiative, she was labeled just as bad as the Diamonds by the show, a genocidal
Because she wanted to kill other gems, and that conflicted with the main character that didn't want to kill. Like, he constantly wanted to find a way to, oh my god, why am I blanking now? He wanted to find a way to solve the issue without killing other gems. That was what he wanted to do. He didn't want to have another gem to get corrupted. He didn't want to have to kill anyone else. That was the entire point of the character. When he was confronted with a character that was like, let's kill them all. I mean, of course he's not gonna be for it, but whatever.
killer by the fandom, and then bubble
It literally shows the kind of person that Lily is. Lily would have been more happy with Bismuth killing everyone. See, what's weird about Lily, the more you delve into the lore of Lily, you kind of have a hunch that she is kind of what she hates. She doesn't like fascists, but she wants to do things that fascists have done before. Okay.
in what is still the most horrific act of intellectual carelessness by Sugar. This happens because the show just doesn't have any fucking writers. The show was entirely written by the storyboard team, who are prioritizing jokes and set pieces above everything else and trying to make the story bend around that. The entire arc about Lars going into space existed entirely because Sugar had this vision of Lars being a space captain and was determined to crowbar that shit in somewhere. All of this combined means the show is going fucking nowhere. Anytime something looks like it might happen, Sugar bullshits her way out of it. We're now on 5 seasons, but with only 2 seasons worth of actual content. There are so many people who've completely given up on Steven Universe, but are only persisting in watching it out of a need for closure for all this time they've invested. A need to see how it ends, if it even does end. You can't build a
I don't think the show's gonna end. I mean, it might end someday. Probably in a few years.
Show on pathological addiction, Sugar. You can't keep teasing people with clickbait titles only to turn out that the episode it's attached to is just more of people jerking around and not doing anything. It's so fucking boring.
But it might be fun for other people. Arc fatigue.
So here's where we hit a snag. You see, unlike many other shows, Steven Universe has always had a scattered approach to character design. Most of the time, character development doesn't happen, then it comes in trickles, and then an epiphany just rushes in at the last possible second of a dragged out story arc. This means there isn't really much to say about each character on their own, especially Steven, which is why all of them are being piled into one section rather than Steven getting one all to himself like Cora did. The sole exception to this, however, is Rose Quartz, who is a culmination of all of Sugar's failings as a writer and is such a critical character despite never appearing in the present time. And as such, she gets her own section detailing the, problematic clusterfuck that is her story.
No! Even if we don't agree, nobody deserves this.
Steven has never been able to catch a break in this series. He goes from being this really annoying kid who doesn't seem to be aware of what's going on around him to just a hanger-on who doesn't do much except watch other people solve problems, and then he learns the magical trick of talking the monster down, which he uses over and over and over again, and then becomes a waffling, wilting coward by the end of the series. Steven has something
He becomes a coward by the end of the series. Yeah, he's a little bitch. He's a bitch, I agree.
Twilight Sparkle problem in that he changes constantly based on whatever Sugar needs him to do. For example, Steven is no stranger to violence and throughout the majority of the series approaches fighting with either neutral detachment or perverse glee. Despite being something of a pacifist, Steven isn't particularly troubled by fighting itself, but because Bismuth wants to lean really hard on an anti-violence message, there are a lot of instances even before the breaking point is revealed that Steven is visibly nervous and uncomfortable around rather standard training exercises. I'd say that Steven was at
Probably because he's okay with fighting in terms of self-defense and shit, but probably not killing the enemy. I don't know. Fuck him. He was a coward to giving himself up to the enemy, but he was doing it so he could get answers, okay? If it's the episode I think you're talking about, he wanted to go on that trial. He wanted to see what the fuck was going on, because at that time, he was like, what? Rose killed enemies? That's it. I gotta answer for my mama's crimes, dude. and that's why he did that, from what I remember. If that's the episode you're talking about, there was a whole point to it, dude. Come on.
At his best during season 2, as this was after he stopped being just some idiot kid the Gems were babysitting, and before he became such a sanctimonious coward.
If we do everything they say, they might go easy on us.
But they're mean. They hurt my friends. They hurt my face. They've got you here in prison.
That's why we can't fight them.
That's why we have to fight them.
But that's just fighting. That's not, okay, killing him, dude. Let's kill him.
There's no reason to fight. Let me talk to her. Please. The fighting has to stop.
Because he kind of learned in the show to kind of be diplomatic. Lily kind of has a problem with diplomacy, I guess. I guess she doesn't like when characters try to solve things without violence. Whoops.
We aren't enemies. We're family.
I particularly like when he has to comfort Peridot, who mistakes the thunder for the cluster. He still has issues that plague the entire series, like the fact that he's way too playful when he's supposed to be taking something seriously, and way too serious when something stupid is happening. Steven doesn't really get to be a character because he has to spend all of his time being the vessel for Sugar's cry and forgive plot. He's like Starlight that way. Too much time is spent trying to prove a point, and as a result, he's got nothing beyond that. This isn't helped by the fact that the show treats him like some kind of messiah figure half the time, and results in him solving long-standing problems that the Gems somehow couldn't solve until this special boy came into their lives. Oh really, Lily? A bland generic white boy has his importance to the plot artificially inflated among the numerous women and non-white characters? Gosh, what a mystery! Okay, I walked into that.
You do.
I wonder if it's because maybe they didn't solve these problems because they never thought of diplomacy. I mean, if they solve these problems on their own, then there wouldn't be a show.
Do it for him, and you would do it again. You do it for her, that is to say, you'll do it for him.
Oh dear lord, where do I begin with Pearl? Pearl wasn't so much a good character that fell by the wayside as the series went on, so much as she was stitched together from various dark romance tropes from the word go. For the first 2 seasons, all we knew about Pearl was that she was in love with Rose, obsessively, and that she was racked with a combination of grief and trauma, but grief and trauma as understood by Rebecca Sugar. Pearl was an erratic, dangerous character who rarely ever faced the consequences for her actions, like that time she almost killed Steven in space, or that time she almost let Steven fall to his death because she was freaking out over a sword, or that time she almost ripped out Steven's gem. Pearl really wants to consequences for her actions, like that time she almost killed Steven in space.
Because, like, she was...
Or that time she almost let Steven fall
She didn't let him fall. She doesn't have time to save him.
to his death because she was freaking out over a sword, or that time she almost ripped out Steven's gem. Pearl really wants to kill Steven. Pearl greatly suffers from the fact that Rebecca Sugar keeps adding extremely dark content to her story for tertiary reasons and doesn't do anything with it. Much of what made Pearl interesting...
I don't know about Rebecca Sugar's fucking past. I'm not the person to ask about that. Theo, what would you do if you found out that your best friend watched DSP? Funny you say that. Funny you say that, Gary. I did have a friend that watched DSP. I think it was last year or the year before. He emailed me around the time that Rambo and Howard did that video, the exposed video, and he messaged me and says, "Hey Theo, did you hear about? Do you know who DSP is?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know that guy. He's an asshole." Well, yeah, I just watched the John Rambo and Howard exposed video, and he is a sleazy asshole, and I'm done with him. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, yeah, he is an asshole. And then he comes out later saying, "Oh, Theo, I didn't know you did DSP videos." It was quite something. It's the guy. So yeah, I did have a friend that watched DSP, and it made sense. I wasn't surprised because I used to play him in Street Fighter 4 a lot, and he would do the same shit that DSP would. If I beat him in Street Fighter 4, he'd be like, "Oh, you suck, man. You're a scrub, man. Oh yeah, see, I'm better than you. See, I'm the real player, dude. I'm just so good." I'm like, "Dude, I fucking beat you." Oh yeah, but I'm better than you, dude. Oh yeah, you're a scrub. Okay, I lose to him. Oh, see, I am a good player. Were you Black Hawk Down?
And that she was dealing with loss
So I mean, it made sense. The banter kind of aligned with DSP almost.
over a loved one, and that love being unrequited, which is something never done with a gay character, was destroyed once it was revealed that Pearl was literally Rose's slave. Sugar actually went on to an interview to describe the dynamic between them as if Alfred was in love with Batman. Not Bruce, just Batman. Sugar doesn't seem to grasp that there's a reason Alfred isn't in love with Batman, because he's a surrogate father to him. And that would be really fucked up. Also, Batman doesn't own Alfred, and Alfred is paid, you stupid fucking—
I see a tower.
But like the whole point of Pearl's and Rose's relationship is supposed to be toxic. It's supposed to be toxic. That's the point.
Built out of my mistakes, and it all comes crashing down.
Amethyst is the character who suffers the most from Steven Universe's lopsided approach to storytelling. Her character arc about dealing with her inadequacies is never really resolved. It just kind of vanishes after meeting the other Amethysts who were made in the same kindergarten. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For the majority of the first season, Amethyst was the cool big sis of the group. She mostly existed to take the piss out of Garnet and Pearl. This went as far as for the other gems to treat her like an animal at times. Like when Pearl asked if they were really gonna let Steven keep a lion, and Garnet replied, "We kept Amethyst." This continued for a while, and Amethyst was a character regarded with derision by a lot of people, which matched up nicely to the derision she was given by everyone except Steven. Then On the Run happened. Amethyst took Steven to the kindergarten she was made in, and then complete tonal whiplash occurred as Amethyst attacks Pearl in a rage before loudly vocalizing her self-hatred at being a homeworld gem. You know Sigrun in the new Colossus? Yeah, that's Amethyst. This is where the problems start, because this was completely abandoned until Reformed, where Amethyst's self-loathing returns in the form of, well, her form. She spends the episode constantly getting destabilized and rushing her regeneration, much to Garnet's chagrin. When Garnet remarks that her new forms look ridiculous, Amethyst flies into a rage and her inadequacy issues come up for the second time and was abandoned again until Cry for Help, where Amethyst sings about being inadequate to Sardonyx. It's abandoned again until Crack the Whip in Steven vs. Amethyst, where Jasper taunts her about being overcooked, and is then abandoned again until the zoo, where Amethyst meets the other Amethyst from the same kindergarten and sees that they're all overcooked and defective like she is.
Well, I mean, the whole arc of fucking Amethyst feeling inadequate doesn't get cured. I mean, you'll always feel inadequate if you feel inadequate. Just because, like, you get over a goal of something doesn't mean that you're never gonna stop feeling that way. That's why it's a, you know, a lot of people tend to like Amethyst as a character because they kind of relate to that character. Like, they might feel like they accomplished something, but still feel like they're inadequate.
At time of writing, it hasn't come up since then, and it looks like it won't come up ever again, as Amethyst has made it clear that she's not going to dump her problems onto Steven when Steven is already dealing with too much from too many people. This is one of Steven Universe's many unresolved plot threads, but Sugar spends a lot of time retreading the same ground and not going anywhere with it. It seems Sugar used the Famethyst, fuck that word is awkward to say, as a means to just quietly retcon it out of her, much like Hasbro did with Fluttershy, and in the face of all the garbage ever else in the series, I honestly respect that a lot more than just trying to force it to work. Recognizing, even if only slightly, that your story idea was terrible and finding a means to just quietly retcon it and transform the character into an actual supporting character carries a lot more integrity than sticking stubbornly to your bad ideas. And Amethyst post-Zoo was generally one of the more enjoyable characters now that she wasn't adding onto the pile of misery everywhere else.
You're not gonna stop what we made together. We are gonna stay like this forever. If you break us apart, we'll just come make you up, and we'll always be twice the gem that you are.
Oh, Garnet. Garnet was something of an interesting character, at least until it was revealed that she was a fusion. For the first season, she was the grounded and
Maybe
sensible
now
straight arrow
it's
to
fixed.
Pearl and Amethyst bullshit, often showing genuine compassion for Steven that no other character seems to show. One episode has Garnet give Steven her powers of clairvoyance, and Steven goes absolutely ballistic because he sees millions of possible deaths for himself, leading to this rather touching line.
Steven, I see so many things that can hurt you. I should never
need
have
to
let one of
show.
them be me.
That's a really touching moment, and Garnet was full of them in the first season.
I think Garnet is like probably like everyone's favorite character. I would be surprised to find someone who does not like that
Once
character.
it was revealed that she was a
I
fusion,
really
however,
don't get this.
Oh boy. Garnet got demoted to extra the moment this happened, except in instances where fusion was the subject of an episode. All episodes
Well, we can't have Garnet be the main feature of every episode. I mean, there's really not much you could do with that character. I mean, it's she once so Lily complained about the show not developing other characters. Okay, the show starts to focus on other characters. Why aren't they focusing on Garnet? Where's Garnet? We need to talk about Garnet. And it's like, okay, that's... Pick a lane.
where Garnet plays a major role, fusion was involved somehow. Some of them were good, like Garnet being horrified at the forced fusion experiments that Homeworld was conducting, that is conveniently forgotten about when it's time to talk about how sad the diamonds are. But then there's Drek-like mindful education, where Garnet vaguely sings about trauma for half the episode and nothing happens until the last minute. Once fusion became a major aspect of the series, Garnet just stopped being a character. She was a vector to talk about fusion. She was a plot device whenever Ruby and Sapphire had to split up, and then demonstrated exactly what the majority of the fandom thought of this plot twist in 3 Gems and a Baby. Garnet only ever gets scant moments to shine and even has to share her own wedding episode with her arch enemies. The complete neglect of Garnet is one of the series' major low points because Garnet was such a fan favorite for so long and was shunted aside in favor of more Steven, Rose, and the Diamonds.
Wait. No! It's all that I am!
Peridot is arguably the best character in the show, but that's not the high
I
praise.
I kind of don't get why there was a wedding for Sapphire and what was it Sapphire and Ruby? Yeah, I don't quite get why there was a wedding for them. What was the point? Okay.
Thinks it is. You see, a common element of a lot of Steven Universe's characters is that they struggle with insecurities, trauma, or other assorted personal demons that they do little about except sulk. What makes Peridot so great is the fact that she has none of that shit! Peridot is introduced making a routine check on the cluster before getting trapped on Earth and is so terrified that she'll be stuck there when the cluster emerges that even Thunder sends her into a—
So far they only had one character to sulk, and that was like kind of Amethyst technically, but I mean, come on. Okay.
Panic and clinging to Steven for support. There are many aspects of Earth's organic nature that she is unaware of, and as a result, many things can easily trick her into thinking the cluster is about to remerge. She enters a tenuous alliance with the Crystal Gems to stop the cluster, where she gains a better appreciation for them, Earth, and living outside Homeworld's rigid caste system. After that, there wasn't really much to do with Peridot, and her 2 biggest episodes after the cluster arc were her trying to bubble a gem monster, and her having to deal with the fact that she doesn't have powers. I'll level with you guys. Too Short to Ride is my favorite episode of the series because it involves Peridot coming to terms with the fact that she's a stunted gem like Amethyst. Side note, you ever notice that Peridot gets other people's character arcs but better? Anyway, Peridot clings to tech as a sort of prosthetic because Era 2 Peridots either don't have powers or in her case have extremely weak powers. Steven tries to make up for destroying her limb enhancers by giving her a tape recorder to keep logs in, which Peridot appreciates very much. Then Lapis destroys it. After the cluster arc, Steven gives Peridot a tablet, to which Peridot is ecstatic and cherishes like she did her tape recorder. Then Amethyst tries to throw it in the ocean. She insists that Peridot doesn't need it because Amethyst doesn't understand exactly why Peridot is so dejected about not having powers. And Peridot freaks out.
Stop playing with that thing. Give me that. No! You don't need it.
You don't know that!
Yes, I do.
Wait. No!
She probably thinks that she doesn't need it because it was distracting her from understanding herself. That's probably why she did that, because it was kind of a distraction. It's like kind of like when you give a kid a fucking iPhone, dude. Okay, they're just gonna be on all the time. Okay, pretty much that, but just on an addictive level. Like, you know how you have those people who are addicted to Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, all that kind of shit. Yeah, and they don't really participate in the world, like kind of like how DSP is with money or with video games or whatever. He has no interest in leaving that house. So that's pretty much why Amethyst was like, oh, time for you to get off of this and time to do some work, dude. Which Crystal Gem watches DSP? Oh man, that's a good question.
It's all that I am!
The panic and desperation in Peridot's voice, I felt that. When you have possessions you care about, especially when they're...
Yeah, but if you care about the possession to like an unhealthy level, you don't think that's it might be good for them to spend some time away from it. I don't know.
Gift from the closest thing you have to family? Those things have a strong personal value.
Yeah, but so you're saying that it's okay for Peridot to have a strong connection? It's like me having a strong connection to a fucking keyboard. Oh, my mom's home. Yeah, my mom's cool and all, but she's not this keyboard, dude. Oh, I love this keyboard, dude. This keyboard, man. Oh, don't take this keyboard away from me. Like, you don't think that's a little fucked up? I mean, maybe that's why Peridot should spend some time away from tablets. Maybe that's why.
To you. Peridot got her tablet as a gift, a very thoughtful gift from Steven. Something Steven gave her because he knows that tech is very important to Peridot. And then Amethyst tries to fucking trash it. Why is everyone breaking Peridot's gifts from Steven? In her panic, Peridot discovers that she can actually move metal, which, okay, on reflection, we should have seen that coming, but still. It's only the sheer desperation she's feeling that even unlocks this. And while Steven and Amethyst are freaking out about it, you can see Peridot very carefully navigate her tablet safely back to shore. The sheer amount of crap Peridot goes through.
Well, she was kind of learning that power to begin with, kind of. I don't know.
One episode alone is intense and contains more actual character work than nearly every other episode combined. Just, can someone please give this gem a hug? After this point, Peridot didn't star much. She mostly played comic relief to other characters and stuck around to be a support for others once in a while. But once her arc was actually done, nobody really knew what to do with her. It was almost like Sugar realized that, unlike any other character, Peridot was just finished. Every other character arc is tediously dragged out so Sugar can keep retreading the same ground. She couldn't do that with Peridot. Peridot was a three-dimensional character, something Sugar is completely unfamiliar with. Now what do we do? So yeah, Peridot just fell by the wayside until season 5, where she had a brief stint of depression after Lapis left and she was just dealing with the breakup. So she took up gardening. But because she tried to bring life back to the kindergarten
Lapis
and failed,
left off.
she has a
The show
breakdown
sucks
over the
now.
fact that she's likely never getting her home or Lapis back again. We're gonna talk about Lapis in just a moment, but I find Lapis and Peridot's relationship fascinating. Peridot loves Lapis very much, which
I can't believe that
contrasts
happened.
just
I
how
didn't know that
cruel and
happened.
nasty Lapis often is to
Okay,
her.
the show
Cruelty
sucks
that
now.
Peridot is
Fuck the
aware
show.
of, but seemingly doesn't care about. Even when Lapis takes all of her things and flees to the moon, there's how cruel and Lapis back again. We're gonna talk about Lapis in just a moment, but I find Lapis and Peridot's relationship fascinating. Peridot loves Lapis very much, which darkly contrasts just how cruel and nasty Lapis often is to her. Cruelty that Peridot is aware of, but seemingly doesn't care about.
Well, because, I mean, she has her own shit to deal with, and it would be very awkward for her to be like, hey, you know what, I know I captured you, you need to get over it, okay? I just, force you to do stuff, I put you in a fucking cell, you need to fucking treat me with respect. That'd be a little weird for Peridot to do that, and it was a very awkward position. Now, I don't know exactly how the breakup played out, so I can't really say much other than maybe Lapis just couldn't take spending more time with her. I don't know. Yeah, I was kind of surprised they wrote Lapis back into the show. That was a little weird, but I guess they also wanted her to be out of the show again.
Even when Lapis takes all of her things and flees to the moon, there's seemingly no anger toward Lapis at all, just a stint of depression that she's gone. Were this intentional, this would have been interesting to explore. Peridot's tertiary...
Well, she might have understood why she left, though. I don't know. I don't fucking know. I don't know what happened.
Comic relief after most of her arc was finished is a contentious point for a lot of people, but to be honest, I'm okay with it. She's generally fun to be around, and like most gems that are new to Earth, she generally bumbles through learning social graces. While Peridot's demeanor can be grating to people for whom comic relief is a dirty word, her attitude and behavior actually contrast very well to the constant crying everywhere else. You see, I find myself on the opposite of that spectrum. Drama and angst only work in small bursts, or if that angst is a result of characters being shitty to each other, while outside of certain tone-required moments, there's really no such thing as too much comedy.
I was terrible to you. I liked taking everything out on you. I needed to. I hated you. It was bad.
Oh boy. So the idea behind Lapis is pretty sound. Sugar
boy,
wanted to
dude.
write a character arc about an abuse victim recovering from an unhealthy relationship, and we know this because she admitted to it. This is something that's rarely ever talked about with LGBT characters and can actually take advantage of the fact that the gems are monogender. Most of the episodes that heavily feature Lapis deal with her supposed trauma at her relationship with Jasper at the bottom of the ocean, her slow progress in regards to adjusting to Earth, especially compared to Navy Ruby, and her budding relationship with Peridot. So you're getting the groundwork laid for an arc about an abuse victim recovering from trauma. This just one little itty bitty niggling problem.
What's the problem, dude?
I'm done being everyone's prisoner. Now you're my prisoner.
I can't get distracted. I've got to hold us down with the weight of your planet's ocean. I liked taking everything out on you.
But like, both of them were abusers. When you're in an abusive relationship, it's not going to be necessarily a healthy relationship. Niggling, yeah, that was a weird word. I don't know why she used that word.
I know I'm not the only one who notices this, but in every case that is supposed to demonstrate the unhealthy relationship between Lapis and Jasper, it's Lapis who is the abuser in that scenario.
Not the person that was kind of like pinning her down against the wall that wanted to fuse with her. That's not the abuser. The one that was backing away, like, oh man, this is. I want to get out of this relationship. It's unhealthy and shit. No, that's the abuser. Abusers always want to get out of the relationship. What? Like, Jasper was so gung-ho to be back in that relationship with Lapis, and Lapis didn't want anything to do with it because she knew it was a toxic relationship. Okay. Lapis, you need to get out of there. It's toxic.
She pulled a fast one on Jasper by agreeing to fuse, only to then trap them at the bottom of the ocean, kept her chained there for over a year, and then admitted to it. This doesn't
Yeah, because she wanted to save the Earth from Jasper, dude. Okay.
even go to Sugar's usual problem of just disregarding things in previous episodes to suit her tunnel vision. The episode that's supposed to establish Lapis as an abuse victim does the exact opposite because Sugar writes like somebody who has never left her fucking house or indeed spoken to another human being. Even after this blunder, Lapis continues to be a pretty nasty person. Now that's to be expected. Anybody who has even a cursory experience with abuse knows that it does not create nice people, and it's just as easy. After this blunder, Lapis continues to be a pretty nasty person. Now that's to be expected. Anybody who has even a cursory experience with abuse knows that it does not create nice people, and it's just as easy to believe that Lapis's trauma comes from being trapped in the mirror for thousands of years instead. It wasn't the fact that Lapis was a raging shitheel that made her so contentious. It was the fact that she repeatedly took that out on the one character people actually liked. You see, audiences
She never left her house, dude.
are biased by nature, and the quickest way for a character to piss away any sympathy one might have had for them is to kick the fandom's favorite person. Peridot was that character, and arguably the most well-designed crystal gem the series had. She had a good redemption arc, actually helped save the world, mouth off to a fascist dictator, actually learned to deal with her problems, and outside of those instances was one of the funniest characters in the supporting cast. And she was the one who reached out to Lapis and tried really hard to make her feel welcome, despite Lapis treating her like dirt at
Because Peridot was the one that captured her. Her and Jasper, two people who fucking. Okay, I mean, come on, Lapis. Why aren't you nice to the person that tried to capture you, man? Come on.
every possible opportunity. What inevitably happened was Lapis found a new victim. But because Sugar continues to write for the character she thinks she wrote, rather than the one that she actually wrote, and has an understanding of abuse on par with Dr. Wolf, this all goes unaddressed and more time is spent reinforcing how sad and angsty Lapis
I mean, the only thing is that like Peridot did try to apologize and make things right, but I mean, it's kind of hard to be like, oh, it's very hard to prove that you have changed as a person. Like, if I was an abusive person, let's say that I was a bad guy and I was a bully, and then I changed a new leaf, and I come to the person who I bullied. I'm like, hey man, I changed. I don't think that person would be like, oh, okay, cool, dude. He'd be like, what the fuck? I don't know, man. Like, it'd be very, very, very weird. Except being a apology takes a long time. Yeah, like, you have to kind of prove that you have changed. I mean, it's like DSP. If DSP were to say in a video, oh, I was an asshole, I am an asshole, I'm sorry, I do want to change and all this stuff. Yeah, you know, that's great and all, but we would need to see that. We can't just take his word for it, because, I mean, he could just be saying that. But okay.
is. This all comes to a very heated conclusion in Raising the Bar, where the fear of being caught up in another war makes Lapis want to leave Earth. The entire episode is one long string of Lapis being the fucking worst, but a personal highlight goes to this scene.
I can't. I won't let myself get caught up in another war.
Imagine writing out and animating a scene this sinister looking and still being under the impression that you're writing an abuse victim. Now, this could have all been potentially—
Because she had fucking flashbacks of, like, what it was like to be in a war. Like, she just didn't want to be— okay.
Interesting. I like the idea— need to reinforce the idea of a story about an abuser going through their own personal redemption story, changing their ways, making a turnaround for themselves. But that idea can only happen when the writer is aware of who this character is, and Sugar remains blissfully ignorant of that fact.
So pretty much she left because of that, then... okay.
See this clearly in the episodes where Lapis's trauma is the central focus. When in this position, she's almost a completely different person, which is jarring to say the least.
You could have been me. And what are you instead?
Amethyst!
Just a joke.
Jasper was arguably the first villain the show ever had, and as far as setting up a conflict, they nailed it with Jasper. There was never really much to Jasper, just a lot of preaching about purging the weak and hating things he uses as a crutch while simultaneously trying to weaponize them. Yeah, Sugar mostly just hyped up a boss fight with her. Even at the end of Jailbreak, she fuses with Lapis, who proceeds to trap her under the ocean to torture her. Unfortunately, when Jasper came out, she was different. Sugar went on record as saying Jasper was somebody who was racked by self-loathing, and... really? Another self-loathing plot? Regardless, we don't get to do much with that, as Jasper is immediately defeated in a fusion battle and then corrupted because she fused with a corrupted gem. This is probably the closest the show has ever come to literally bullshitting their way out of a plot, and it's mostly because of the Steven-focused morality the show has. To put it simply, because we're going to expand on it later, if Steven likes someone, then there are a million excuses, and that wasn't so bad.
I mean, like, look, like this whole— all of these themes that this show is trying to deal with is in a very simplistic way, and Lily's just saying, like, this doesn't go far enough, this doesn't go deep enough. Like, of course they're not going to go into, like, more adult-themed topics, and Jasper having self-loathing, it's a fine story because it does it in a different way. There's different ways of self-loathing. Yeah, you could boil everything down to self-loathing, but it was more of an inadequacy. She didn't feel like that she was powerful enough, and she wanted more power, and what she would do to do it. It's like trying to get someone who took meth, and like, alright, I want to get off meth. Then they start craving, they go through withdrawals, and they just end up crawling back to the drug. That's kind of Jasper. She got on that drug of power. She was like, oh, I'm powerful, man. And then she couldn't get that drug anymore, so she starts to really try to get that going again. It's kind of rough. Knew this show by name and reputation of its fans. You know, to be honest, I kind of think it's unfair that this show gets shout out because of its fan base. I like the show. I think the show is fine for what it is. I mean, there's issues with it. I don't think it's a great show either, but I think it's pretty good. It's entertaining. But I do think that I just don't think that the fans... I think it's unfair that the fans have tainted this show. But that's just me. I mean, maybe that'll be another video for another day.
Adds further actions. But if Steven doesn't like someone, they deserve to choke. This would be an interesting character flaw.
Wait, what?
If Steven likes someone, then there are a million excuses, and that wasn't so bad, further actions. But if Steven doesn't like someone, they deserve to choke.
He tried to make Jasper change. Before she became a corrupted gem, he literally was trying to get her to change her position. But she was so far gone that it wasn't gonna work, so unfortunately she had to take care of that. But okay. Apparently he wanted her to die secretly. I guess that was a deleted episode, dude.
This would be an interesting character flaw if it weren't for the fact that the show is using this metric to determine who the sympathetic and irredeemable characters are. So Jasper and Kevin are terrible, but the consistently worse Diamonds, Lars, Ronaldo, Lapis, and Andy are sympathetic.
Why? What did Ronaldo do? I mean, well, I guess he tried to kill someone in one episode, but okay. Well, whatever. Andy, I think is Steven's Republican uncle. Why isn't he sympathetic? Oh, because he's a conservative? Okay. God, this Tumblr ass show. It's onion rings. Hey, you know what, Dovahkiin? It can't be that Tumblr. They made a Republican a sympathetic character.
The show says Steven likes this person, therefore you should too.
You are to leave the cluster to grow. It will tear apart the Earth, and I will take immense satisfaction in erasing that hideous rock off of our star maps. Is that clear?
Yellow Diamond is the proof that everything Sugar says about having planned everything from the start is a complete lie. When Yellow Diamond first appeared, she was exactly the kind of character we had come to expect from all the setup. Menacing, rude.
They probably won't, but I mean, it depends on the characters. And it depends on the situation. You can't really just look at a situation on a surface level and just assume, well, they decided to make this character sympathetic, but not the same character sympathetic. It depends. But again, I don't know White Diamond. I didn't make it that far into the show, so.
Ruthless and cold-hearted. She was posed, animated, and voiced perfectly. What do I mean when I say this? Well, the Diamonds are all blatant space Nazis, right down to committing at least 2 acts of genocide. There isn't much you can do with that as far as complexity goes, unless you're a shit person, so all you could really do is instill a feeling in the viewer of kicking your ass is going to be fun. This tends to be why the more overtly totalitarian a character is, the more they're reduced to just a string
I think
of
Lily's making this assumption based on what happened with the other Diamonds, because I think, Did Yellow Diamond and Blue Diamond become good guys? I don't know.
Intimidating poses and ass kicking. It's all saying, here's our villain, they kick so much ass, so it's gonna be all the sweeter when we grind their face into the dirt. There's just one problem. Sugar hated it.
But that's like a different fucking tone and story. But okay.
Sugar didn't write this episode and apparently hated Yellow Diamond in this so much that she personally wrote and storyboarded her next appearance in That Will Be All, which had her radically change from being ruthless and cold-hearted to repressing her grief over the loss of Pink Diamond.
Because grief can lead to bad decisions. That's why a lot of people don't think it's a good idea if you go through grief to make life-changing decisions.
After this, her next appearance was in The Trial, also not written by Sugar, and Yellow was back to being a colorful Darth Vader.
Oh, disregard that last statement. I might have gotten carried away.
You can see this pushing and pulling with Yellow throughout the series, and
But in The Trial, though, she based all her decisions on the death of Pink Diamond. She did all that out of her grief. Okay. Yellow Diamond should have left it pent up like Steven, dude.
Depending on who is writing her, she becomes a
yeah, she should have just not said anything.
Completely different character. For a while, someone was pushing back against Sugar's insistence that the villains be sad little babies, but Sugar ultimately won out, and by the time of Reunited, Yellow was racked with grief and immediately experiences a turnaround as Steven literally bullshits everyone's problems away, and oh my God,
dude.
Of the 4 Diamonds, Yellow Diamond was the biggest disappointment because she was the only one introduced as a villain and whom Sugar had to keep fucking with in order to break her into her terrible, sad mold.
You cannot fathom how much I've mourned. What thousands of years of grief has done to me!
Blue Diamond is arguably one of the worst characters in the show.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought a death would lead to grief, and grief leads to anger and shit? Of course. Why are the Diamonds so fucking massive? Because they're fucking diamonds, dude.
Oh, because from the moment
they're
of her
like
debut,
the head
her
honchos,
actual
the
debut,
rocks.
she was nothing but a grief-racked mess that's supposed to be sympathetic to people who don't know what sympathetic is. Personally, I find something rather disgusting in Blue Diamond being portrayed as having grieved for thousands of years over the loss of Pink Diamond, while holocausting both Crystal and Homer.
Wait, hold up.
To people who don't know what sympathetic is. Personally, I find something rather disgusting in Blue Diamond being portrayed as having grieved for thousands of years over the loss of Pink Diamond, while holocausting both Crystal and Homeworld gems both before and after that time for various reasons, up to and including mouthing off, being defective, fusing, and just because she feels like it.
But just because they made you feel sad for a character, I mean, of course they're fucking villains. Of course they did bad shit, but that doesn't mean that they can't feel sad. Oh, well, this person was a fascist, and she lost someone that was on her side. Of course, that's impossible. She can't feel sadness. She's evil, dude. Okay. It reminds me of the tallest, those two diamond beings. That's fucking massive. Wait. Is that a Seek bar? Yeah, her video is 2 hours long. Don't worry. We will not sit through the full 2 hours. I'm not that sadistic.
Hello, Starlight. You certainly gave everyone a scare. They're all just thrilled to see you safe and sound.
I do like her design. I will say
being defective,
I like
fusing, and just because she feels like it.
Hello, Star.
I love White Diamond's design. To be honest, I'll be honest and say that I like her design. I like that it's black and white. I like that it's ominous. It's overpowering. I like her design. What's not to like? I mean, she has this nice figure. She
just thrilled to see you.
Great design.
White Diamond was Sugar's last-ditch effort to make the other three diamonds look sympathetic in the face of mounting and severe criticism of the way she was writing. Introduced with shudders and dread, showcased as a towering figure that talks like Mother Gothel, and whose pearl has a cracked eye and a 1,000-yard stare, and the implication that she has Pink Diamond's original pearl because of the way their gems are positioned, and that theory is just stupid enough to actually be canon. White Diamond was an enigma for a long time and is presented as the true villain by being a fuck-ton scarier than the villains we've already had.
Yeah.
It may be familiar to people who play modern video games and are accustomed to microtransactions
Diamonds
after the
are a
loot box
scam.
Armageddon of 2017. It's not working for the people who actually paid attention to this shit, but it's still scummy. You can see that characters are the ones that suffer the most from Sugar's bad priorities and fragmented storytelling. When main characters have to deal with their issues, it happens extremely quickly because Sugar is cramming it all in at the last minute, order shrugged off for the majority of an arc before bolting. The rest are scattered, and Sugar. Time I was writing this script, I was also covering Little Witch Academia in a minute, and I noticed a similar thing happen there, where the main cast shifts in the second half of the series, and the fun characters get demoted to.
Little Witch Academia is a fucking goofy, lighthearted show. Of course, they're gonna focus on Diana and Akko because they're the major characters of the story. Susie and Lotte are good characters, but they're not the main characters. They're side characters. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that the side characters would get less of a focus?
Extra while being replaced by characters that are far less interesting. And now
Croy was less See, this is why Lily has shit opinions. Croy was a very interesting character. Croy was, Chariot was, Akko was. I mean, come on. Those were interesting characters. Never seen it or gonna see it. Lily never heard of side characters. Yeah, exactly. I only saw the OVA. Just watch the show on Netflix. It's a pretty good show. I like the show.
I'm wondering something. You see, Steven Universe is chock full of anime references. Way too fucking many. The crew is really obsessed with anime and shoves references into it at every possible opportunity, and I think they're shoving it into their writing as well. That would explain why character arcs get rushed in order to get to the next poorly animated fight scene. Whoops, did I just say that out loud?
Oh boy. Poorly animated, dude. It's a fucking, simple animated show. I mean, you're... Okay.
I don't want to dwell too long on the animation, as I don't think it's a critical priority within the show, but a lot of people do talk about it, and it is a symptom of the disease that is festering inside Steven Universe at its core. The animation in Steven Universe is bad. Really fucking bad. Characters are constantly being drawn off model,
being drawn off model. The thing is though, the whole point of the animation is to be off model. That's really the point of the show. They kind of it's in the design. it's by design that the characters are off model, but okay.
Changing heights, changing proportions, changing facial structure, models flat out breaking, and many of the main characters have been shrinking down to increasingly chibi forms as the series goes on. There is almost never 2 episodes where the characters look the same, with characters made of angular shapes like Peridot being the most egregious offenders. It's clear the show does not have model sheets, a bare minimum pre-production standard for animation, and there's a good chance the storyboards are drawn freehand. None of the usual practices to maintain proper proportions for characters is being employed here in an egregious show of laziness and unprofessional behavior.
But it's by design. And like the thing is that if it's laziness and unprofessional, the characters would look even worse, because the thing is that when you're designing characters to be aired on TV or just being shown, you want to make it look aesthetically pleasing. The designs might go off model, and that might piss people off. That is a criticism. You could say that it is a criticism. It's valid. It's valid to say I don't like the show for going off model. I like consistent animation. But but still, like, the characters still look fine. They look decent. It's so that it's inconsistent by design, because even in the old animation days, in the 90s and the 80s, a lot of characters were going off model, and there were a lot of animation errors, and there were a lot of stuff going on with the animation that was generally because of how poorly designed, or not poorly designed, poorly budgeted the animation was. And to the point where now animators kind of look back at that and say that in its own way, that is more interesting to look at, to see how each episode had different animation and different models. And a lot of people like that. The person who did Studio Trigger, who did Kill la Kill and Gurren Lagann, there were episodes in those shows where the director purposely went to other animation studios to animate certain episodes. That's why some of the animation is different. When you go to episode, I think, 4 of Kill la Kill, the animation is completely different, because the director has stated that, I like back in the days when we used to animate, we would always constantly have different animation studios handling animation, which would lead to different model sizes and different proportions and different consistencies. Now everything's kind of streamlined and more into a standard kind of look. So that's kind of the point. I was watching Scooby-Doo and Shaggy went off model. What the fuck? Yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous to make this kind of comparison when people even complained about criticize The Simpsons. The Simpsons' latest animation is so stiff. If you go to old Simpsons animation, it's very fluid and there's a lot of goofy in between the smears in the animation. Now, when you watch The Simpsons, it's very stiff and standard, and that's fine. That's fine, but I mean, it depends on what the show is. So Lily's criticism here, it's kind of off base to me. It's kind of ignoring the point. See if this bitch fucking review Gravity Falls. She probably will at some point, because she did Korra, then she did Steven Universe. So she's probably gonna do Gravity Falls at some point.
There is absolutely no excuse for the animation to be this fucking sloppy. The only episode where the animation remains on model, fluid, and without any kind of animation flubs is Mindful Education, the best animated episode. I need to make that distinction clear because I'm gonna tear this thing a new asshole in a minute. Mindful Education is a strange case study because every other episode
this was done by a Studio Trigger animator, by the way, this episode
has consistent model changing and animation problems going back to the first season. There isn't any other episode except Mindful Education that doesn't look like it was animated without any pre-production whatsoever. So what the fuck happened? Easy. They got someone else to do it. Mindful Education was animated by Studio Trigger. The lesbian witch people. So
lesbian witch people, dude.
Animation is a lot more floaty than Steven Universe is usually known for, and characters aren't model switching constantly like a PS2 era Kingdom Hearts cutscene made during crunch time.
So you really do care for her. Do you hate me?
But here's the part where I rip the...
Do you hate me?
So yeah, the episode is very beautifully animated and really shows what Steven Universe can look like if they know what they're doing. But here's the part where I rip the rug out from underneath people. You remember how at the start of the section I said that the animation is not something I'd like to focus on because it ultimately has zero effect on the quality of the show? Mindful Education is one of the worst episodes of Steven Universe. About 3/4 of the story is dedicated to Connie apologizing over suplexing because it ultimately has zero effect on the quality of the show, like if they know what they're doing. But here's the part where I rip the rug out from underneath people. You remember how at the start of the section I said that the animation is not something I'd like to focus on because it ultimately has zero effect on the quality of the show? Mindful Education is one of the worst episodes of Steven Universe. About 3/4 of
I thought it was a pretty good episode.
the story is dedicated to Connie apologizing.
Put this at a slower speed. Oh god. Let's see how it is at a slower speed. Ooh. I think it goes slower when you go down.
Over suplexing.
Nope. Nope, that's too fast.
It really shows what Steven Universe can look like if they know what they're doing. But here's the part where I rip the rug out from underneath people. You remember how at the start of this section I said that the animation is not something I like to focus on because it ultimately has zero effect on the quality of the show? Mindful Education is one of the worst episodes of Steven Universe.
Enough of that.
About 3/4 of the story is dedicated to Connie apologizing over suplexing someone as a result of her combat training. This results in Stevonnie not being able to maintain their stability as a fusion and having to meditate with Garnet, set to a tediously long musical number about dealing with traumatic experiences. One major problem with this, however, is that the inciting incident is not a traumatic experience.
It's traumatic because she felt so bad for doing it. She's a fucking kid. When you're a kid and you needlessly hit someone, I mean, it just makes you kind of put things in perspective. Okay.
It's muscle memory. The traumatic experience ends up being Steven having to deal with leaving Eyeball trapped in space, bubbling bismuth for nothing, and letting Jasper get corrupted.
But I thought Steven wanted to kill Jasper. Why would he feel bad about Jasper when he wanted to kill her? Wow, Lily, it's like you can't keep a consistent argument. Oh, whoops. Wait a second.
And the guilt he feels about all of those things, but only for 2 minutes because the episode hastily rushes a conclusion for that and the episode ends. More time is given to an accident than the actual deep-seated issues a character is facing before just leaving it hanging there. Oh, and before you ask, yes, the very next episode is completely detached from this and it's just left there until 13 episodes later. This is why the animation is small potatoes, because the single best looking episode of the series is also one of the worst episodes of the series because the sloppy and unprofessional animation is just a
unprofessional animation.
Symptom of a disease that affects the entire show. Most cartoons have animation errors, and a lot of modern cartoons are absolutely packed with them, but they often amount to glitches. With Steven Universe, it's a direct decision by the creators to say fuck it to the very concept of effort. However, handing the animation off to someone else won't really make the show better, because that same laziness is also present in the writing and characterization, the core of a work. Picking apart the animation and making comparison shots are ultimately meaningless, and Mindful Education is proof of that. It's fitting that this episode was animated by Studio Trigger because they have the exact same problem I'm talking about. A lot of their shows are beautifully animated, but the writing quality is boring at
the writing quality of Studio Trigger is boring and bad. It's a
best and disgustingly regressive at worst.
Kill la Kill is regressive? Get the fuck out of here. Lily, okay, you know what? Kill la Kill might not have been my favorite anime, but I liked the show. I just thought it was a little generic. But it was good and funny and all that. The whole point of Kill la Kill is to be a satire of fucking sexualization in anime. It was a parody. It was making fun of it. You're really gonna look at fucking Kill la Kill and be like, oh, it's regressive, dude. They didn't make the characters in skimpy outfits out of seriousness. They weren't being serious when they made the show. But okay. But let's look at Kill la Kill as if it's a serious anime. Okay. It's up there with Spirited Away, dude.
Except that's actually a lie, because this episode wasn't actually animated by Studio Trigger, and here's where I'm gonna rip the rug out from underneath everyone again. This episode was animated by the same South Korean studio that animated every other episode. One person from Trigger was brought on to do the storyboards. Not animate, the storyboards. You see, a lot of shows are animated in South Korea, and if there's one thing that characterizes South Korean animation—
when people say Studio Trigger animated this, they're not saying that Studio Trigger worked on that episode. They know it was just a storyboard artist. A storyboard artist wants to guest star it, whatever.
Is that they ain't got time for any of your shit. They will give you the exact kind of animation your storyboards tell them to give you. Simply put, if your storyboards suck, your animation will also suck. Looking at the storyboards from most Steven Universe episodes, they look haphazardly drawn. Now, storyboards in general had never been the pinnacle of art, they're strictly utilitarian, but you'll notice there's a consistent theme of a single line drawing. Somebody drew it with the pencil tool in MS Paint, and quite—
How do you know it's MS Paint? But like that's— but even then, when you look at this, you could say that this still looks pretty good for a drawing. It's a good sketch. The show is supposed to have a sketch feel. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of it. But okay.
Quite frankly didn't give a shit. It's no surprise the characters are constantly going off model and warping in size when this is what your boards look like. The big indicators of this is simply the filmography of the two studios who animate the show. Sunmin Image Pictures, whose body of work includes Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, Ben 10, and Gargoyles, and Rough Draft Studios, whose body of work includes Ren and Stimpy, The Critic, Rocko's Modern Life, Dexter's Lab, Pinky and the Brain, King of the Hill, Johnny Bravo, Daria, The Powerpuff Girls, SpongeBob SquarePants, Chalk Zone, Samurai Jack, The Forces of Evil.
Goes through all of the shows. We don't need the full resume, buddy.
Bear Bears, The Simpsons, Futurama, Family Guy, American Dad, Ferngully, The Last Rainforest, Hotel Transylvania.
Lily does this to me. Her opinions are just so bad. It's such a... she makes terrible videos. It's what, like, I've seen so many better criticisms of the shows she reviews than her fucking videos, and it does get annoying when people kind of use Lily as the source of this is why, like you know, I did a endure of her core review, and I was like, well, Theo, Lily has a point. This show does have that issue. Yeah, of course, the show's not fucking perfect, but my issue with Lily's review isn't that she didn't like it, it's because she has so many shitty opinions about it that either miss the point or she's regurgitating other opinions. Half of these opinions that she states in here are from other people that do a better job. As I said earlier, RoboBuddies did a whole review of Steven Universe criticizing it, and her review was far more intellectual than this fucking video. She goes through so many other portions of the show that make sense. This video is just, she is mostly angry that Steven doesn't kill the Nazis, pretty much. That's pretty much what it boils down to. And then the rest is just kind of filler.
And many others which I did not have time to mention. So if one animation studio, has a body of work like this and features some of the most well-animated cornerstones of anybody's childhood who likely started gawking at the screen when I said this, then I think we can rule out the animators themselves as the ones responsible. And of course, Mindful Education, which had a guest storyboard artist, has much cleaner and consistent storyboards that do the job they're supposed to do and communicate with the animators. Mindful Education brought on Takafumi Hori as the lead storyboard artist, and who are the lead storyboard artists in most episodes? I'm shocked.
Oh shit.
Truly I am. This is my shocked face. The common defense of this from a certain subset of Steven Universe fans is that the whole thing is a stylistic choice. It's not. That's what every terrible hack says about their crappy work.
Of course! If you say it's stylistic, that's an excuse, dude. You're a hack.
Want to see intentionally bad as a stylistic choice? I ask you to look once again at Sticking Around.
So pretty much, in order for a show to look bad and get away with it, it has to look this bad. It can't look like Steven Universe that kind of looks competent enough and kind of off-model and shit. No, it has to be this blatant for it to be okay. Okay.
A cartoon from the 90s that is intended to look like the doodles in a kid's math book have come to life with a healthy amount of surrealist animation to it. And even that manages to stay on model for 5 fucking minutes. But once again, the pedigree of Rough Draft Korea completely eliminates that concept. The storyboards are just drawn like a fucking scribble with no thought put toward maintaining consistent proportions. Nobody is checking proportions or models at all. There's no pre-production put into this show.
Whatever.
It's just draw freehand, whatever. I know this is the overall theme of the video, but it bears
But
repeating.
I guess Steven Universe has to look blatantly bad, like a stick figure, for it to pass in Lily's book. It's kind of a cherry pick kind of fucking argument.
You guys are so fucking lazy.
Lazy, dude. What is this one? I don't know what this point is. I don't know if I have anything to say about this.
When it comes to LGBT representation, Steven Universe got a free ride on.
I don't. Maybe this will be a different video, but that's it for Lily Pete. Let me just So that's it. Thanks for watching this. Let me see if I can get there. Invalid end time. What the fuck? Wait. I think I have to do that. There we go. Make that public. Upload. Alright. Now, we're gonna shift gears